Hello. Okay, Blue Beetle. When it comes to the character of Blue Beetle, I'm not really familiar with him. I've never read the comics, so this film is my first introduction into this character and his world. So, first of all, this film does fall into very familiar superhero territory with its superhero origin tropes, and it's very superhero generic third act when you've got the hero and the villain going head to head in this CGI, smash it all up, chaotic conclusion. All those kind of familiar beats and elements are there, but at the same time, they really managed to make this film feel fresh and different. There's this very kind of fresh and different vibe about this movie that I just really liked. At the center of this film, at the center of this story is this Latino family. It's this family unit and their relationship with one another, in which that's where the main focus is at, and that's where this film's heart and emotional core is. And it's one of those aspects of the movie that really just allows this film to work for me. I immediately found myself warming to every character within this family unit that's surrounding our lead, Jaime Reyes. And it's this family dynamic that just, for me, really works beautifully. And you just really just find yourself warming and relating to these characters. There are moments of silliness throughout this film when it comes to the humour, when it comes to the comedy. It does go a little bit over the top, but it also works because it fits in within the tone that they create right from the start. So it never feels like it's out of place. It never made me cringe or wince. There are moments of silliness, but it works because it fits in within the overall feeling and that vibe of the movie. And this is one moment with the Nan that's in the trailers. It's fucking bonkers, but it also works because like I just said, it fits in within this tone that they created right from the start of this film. And just throughout the movie, the way in which they balance the tone is beautiful. And I really dug the humour within this film as well. I was a little bit worried that we were going to get that generic kind of Marvel humour, and we don't. It has its own flavour, it has its own vibe. There are moments of kind of very crude and even toilet humour. If handled incorrectly, wouldn't have worked, but it works here, and it gives this film this kind of human, this very human and real feeling to it that allows the characters to be a lot more relatable as a result because of this humour. I'm not going to go into detail into what these certain moments are and what the humour involves, but there are this is one moment, and it's like it was like, oh, I mean, I was not expecting that, but then it just really gives this film that kind of human feeling, and that sort of allows us to as viewers to relate to these characters even more. All I'm going to say, just so you kind of know one of the scenes that I'm referencing, it's a kissing scene. And that's all I'm going to say. And it just really worked, and it just really helped add this other layer onto the film that just allowed it to feel different and new, and just, not to sort of have that kind of very same formulaic, generic Marvel humour. This was its own thing. It had a different vibe about it, and yes, in places it's over the top, but for the most, it worked. The humour within this film really did work for me. This is also one of those movies that can be as deep as you want it to be, or just take it as face value and you will just enjoy it. There are deeper themes buried within this movie, and if you go looking for them, they are there, whether it be politics or social class. If you go looking for them, they're there, and this film can be as deep as you want it to be. But it doesn't get bogged down by all of that as well. Like I said, it's there if you go looking for it, but the film doesn't get bogged down by it. And so, yeah, I just really, really like that aspect of the movie also. And these deep themes are running right throughout the film. And I just found it added a lot more depth to what could just be a very shallow, generic superhero movie. Yes, those elements are there, those very familiar superhero tropes are all there, but it just this is what I'm kind of saying. This is what I'm saying about this film having that kind of very fresh and different feel about it. The film also has this very kind of 90s, early 2000s superhero look to it through the cinematography and just the way the film was shot and how the narrative played out. Just, yeah, it reminded me of those superhero movies from the 90s and the early 2000s. And at the same time, just really took me back to being a kid again, watching those kind of early morning kids shows on the weekend like Power Rangers and Animorphs. And yeah, it just had that very similar vibe, but just very well made, I thought. And it just took me back to being a kid again and just having a blast. Being immersed into this crazy story and just having the sort of, being exhilarated by the action on the screen, because the action in this movie is very exhilarating. It's very fun. I'm not a massive fan on sort of some of the choices and decisions made with the way in which some of the action is shot. There's a little bit of shaky cam here and there, which I'm not a massive fan of, but overall, the action was very fun. It was very entertaining. Some of it's in the trailers, and just I found myself grinning and just being transported back to being a kid again. It was fun. It was exciting. And because you feel for the characters, because you can relate to the characters on an emotional level, it elevates all of this so much more. It just elevates the entire experience so much more. And it's just the simplest of things that really kind of just do it for me. Like a guy in a suit. Like, I loved that we got a guy in a suit. Like, you could see it's a suit. Yeah, there's CGI elements here and there. But we've got our lead character, our hero, in an actual suit. And it just gives the film that more of a tangible feeling to it. Again, being able to just relate to these characters even more, because it adds a certain amount of groundedness to a very fantastical kind of story, really, and just it allows us to just be immersed even more because it looks real. You can tell it's an actual, our character, our living breathing human being is actually within the suit, and it just gives that film that kind of more of a real feel about it. So first of all, apologies for pronouncing the names incorrectly, but you've got our lead character, Jaime Reyes, who's played beautifully by a Xolo Maridueña. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he is absolutely brilliant in this role. He is Blue Beetle. And, as our lead, he is magnetic and just sells the character. There are moments in which you can really feel his anger, his pain, his hurt, and it just feels raw and real through his performance. And I absolutely dug his very charming and magnetic performance. There are moments in this movie, well, the overall movie, to be honest with you, knocked me for 6 because I just was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did. And there are moments, emotional moments throughout this movie that really just knocked me out of the blue. Like, I just was not expecting to be as affected by these moments as much as I was, but it's because of the way in which these characters are brought to life and just the focus of the story, this very kind of family-centric story in which they focus on is what really elevates those emotional beats. It's not perfect, no, this film isn't perfect, but it has a focus and clear passion behind the scenes to create a very heartfelt, emotional, but fun, exciting ride. It nails the humour and emotional beats perfectly. There are moments in which it gets dark, but it's handled beautifully. One of my favourite moments within this movie, I believe they've already released this scene somewhere on the internet, and it's when Jaime first transforms into the Blue Beetle in the kitchen, and I just love the way in which this scene plays out. It's quite horrifying. I could just imagine kids being terrified of this scene, or even my younger self actually being a little bit disturbed by just the way in which this scene plays out. It's quite horrific. But again, it's beautifully handled, and just the way in which this moment is shot and the look of it, I just really, really dug. And considering the budget of this movie compared to other superhero movies that we've had recently, and the fact that this film was originally intended to be released on streaming, I thought the CGI was pretty impressive. Like, it was pretty decent. And, you know, there are moments with the CGI that I noticed an incredible amount of detail and thought had been put into certain elements. Like, it's always bugged me when a character sort of just transforms into whatever it is they're transforming into, and I've always found it to be quite lazy in which they do that. But there was so much detail and thought put into these transformations when it involved CGI, that I just found, again, just very fresh and different, and you could just again sense that kind of passion and love behind the scenes when it came to creating these characters and just bringing this story to life. You know, and like I've previously said, yes, this movie does have flaws. It's not perfect. You know, like the main villain, for example, played by Susan Sarandon as Victoria Cord. She just didn't work for me, but she also served a purpose. She was there for a reason which served the story, but at the same time she was very two-dimensional, and the villain didn't quite work for me. So yeah, like I said, you know, this film isn't perfect, but it's really, really enjoyable. It's an awful lot of fun. The action is exhilarating, and you just get really immersed for 2 hours. You know, this film is escapism. It took me back to being a kid again. It's great seeing an actual person in a suit. And yeah, there was just so much that worked that just really surprised me, because I was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I was. And it's a pleasant surprise. I really think people need to go out and watch this film. You might not like it, you might hate it, but for me personally, this was an enjoyable experience that I would actually go back and watch this again in the cinema. I would return to the cinema to watch this again. That's how much fun I had with this movie. And for me personally, I can't believe I'm going to say this, because I really, really did like The Flash. But I think Blue Beetle is the best superhero movie released this year so far. Like, we have got a couple more coming out, but so far for me, I think personally this is the best superhero movie released this year so far. And I just really did not think I was going to say that, but this film does so much right. Again, it's not perfect. It has little things here and there that bugged me, but overall, this was an entertaining ride with a real kind of deep emotional core. And again, it's one of those experiences which you can make as deep as you want it to be, or shallow as you wanted it to be. So yeah, I really do recommend this film. Please go and check it out. Yeah, Blue Beetle. I will be giving Blue Beetle an 8 out of 10. So yeah, there are my thoughts on Blue Beetle. Have you seen it yet? If you have, what did you think? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I said? Then let me know below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see future reviews and just general movie talk from a geek in Wales, just ramble on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I have got reviews coming for Scrapper and The Blackening. I'm looking forward to bringing you guys my thoughts on those two movies. They're not released here in the UK until the 25th of August, I believe. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.